Mongols, a bunch of savages, a pack of barbarians. What can they understand in the art of war? The powerful Chinese Jin dynasty paid in full for its condescending attitude towards the Mongol army. The army led by the great Genghis Khan swooped in and conquered a wealthy state. That triumph was the first great international success of the horde. At the beginning of the 13th century, the Mongols established as a terror of Asia, the Middle East, and Eastern Europe. The Mongol Empire soon became the largest state in human history, covering a quarter of the Earth's land. Later it would be overtaken by the British Empire, but second place in such a ranking is still impressive. It stretched from Central Europe to the Sea of Japan, and from Arctic to the Indian subcontinent. At its peak, the empire was home to over 100 million people. All of Europe didn't reach 200 million. The territory of Mongolia reached 24 million square kilometers. For comparison, the modern invaders, the Russian Federation, covers 17 million square kilometers. The secret of the Mongols' success seems to be obvious: a lot of armed people. In addition, this is also the rare case when quantity meets quality. Competent, flexible, sometimes revolutionary ideas of organizing and conducting combat made the Mongol horde one of the best armies created by humans. Genghis Khan is probably the most successful commander, the god of war. Temujin, Khan's real name, was not just a commander. Rather, something like a leader, the ruler of all the steppe peoples. When our hero was 9, his father was poisoned, and he and his family were forced to roam the steppes. However, he survived, grew up, and was able to regain power in his father's gang. Hollywood takes a backseat. Temujin began to capture neighboring camps and increase the army. Building his strength, he avenged his father's killers, and such victories made the young man the true king of the steppes. In 1206, the Kurultai was held. This is a congress of steppe peoples. Temujin was declared the supreme Khan, the leader of all tribes, and called Genghis Khan. Things took off. Genghis Khan divided his newly created army of united Mongol tribes into tens, hundreds, and thousands as primitively as possible. There was a special feature: only the closest relatives were included in 110. 100 were formed by distant relatives or close friends, neighbors. Men fought side by side, ready to give their lives for each other. The division into the tens, hundreds, and thousands remained even in the civilian life of the army. Today the 10 of you are sitting at the table tending to horses, and tomorrow, with the same crew, you are off chopping heads. Competition was among hundreds. Everyone aimed to be the first to capture the fortress or kill more enemies. The Mongols didn't have time to think about conflicts. Genghis Khan constantly found an interesting occupation for them. Upon taking the throne, Temujin created a new yasa, a sort of constitution. He wrote down the laws by which the Mongols had to live and fight. Soldiers literally were forbidden to fear and flee from the battlefield. The desertion of one soldier led to the execution of his entire 10. This worked in both directions. Genghis Khan revered courage and honor so much that he personally offered to join his army to enemies who showed these traits in battle. These savages started something like traffic rules, or rather the principle: the one who is behind is to blame. The one who rode behind was responsible with his life for the man in front of him and for his property. Also, primitive barbarians built the best postal network of their time. Each camp, even the smallest, had a postal tent, well supplied with food, water, guards, and fresh horses. 2 messengers roamed between them. Everything worked perfect. Modern male can learn. This gave the Mongols a great advantage in war, as the orders of Genghis Khan and his descendants quickly spread even through an army of 100,000. The Mongols were nomads, living on move. They needed 15 to 20 minutes to assemble their tents and rush in search of a new home. Even on long campaigns, they didn't get tired. The horde used a breed of small horses, so on the move, the warriors slept in the saddle. So, the Mongols reached the battlefields full of strength and faster than the enemies expected. The horde never relied only on numbers and force. Genghis Khan didn't defeat his enemies with cannon fodder, contrary to stereotypes. They acted cunningly. Some of the Mongols' techniques are still used by the armies now. They actively used reconnaissance, which gave detailed information about the enemy. Temujin was looking for weaknesses, where he aimed the strike. This is how the horde overcame the Great Wall of China, discrediting its defensive function. The Mongols captured a fortress on the wall and calmly led a 100,000-strong army through it. Even if the enemy had a larger army, the horde was not inferior quantitatively in the hot spot. All due to careful preparation. They used their main advantage, perfect horseback riding. They could approach the enemy in a single line, then suddenly scatter to surround the opponent, the so-called scattering formation. This put pressure on opponents. Genghis Khan liked to intimidate enemies. Imagine, fortress is guarded by a moat. But this was not a problem. They throw hundreds of prisoners from previous battles into the water and simply walk over their heads. How to fight after that? It was difficult to surprise the Mongols or to scare them. They spent their entire lives wielding weapons. And when they didn't wave, they practiced waving and hunting. By the age of 3, children were riding horses, and by 5, they could hunt their own prey with a bow. At the peak, Genghis Khan's army numbered over 200,000 soldiers. For major campaigns, they went together, divided into large groups. This made it easier to feed soldiers and complete multiple tasks. Genghis Khan's warriors were versatile. They were successful both in sieges and in field battles. They struck so fast, the enemy was captured before drawing a sword. They attacked in small groups, then quickly escaped. They did not allow the enemy to catch his breath. Genghis Khan chose the battlefield. The horde had no shame in retreating, fleeing from battle. The enemy rushed to chase the Mongols and ran straight into an ambush. Or to where it suited the Mongols to fight. During the chase, the enemy got much more tired. So strategic retreat and luring were among the Mongols' most effective tactics. Genghis Khan's descendants did the same during the war with the Hungarians. The grandson of the great Khan, Khan Batu, avoided a clash with a stronger and larger army. The horde fought only after a retreat, when reinforcements arrived. Swords were crossed on the Slana River, and the Mongols literally destroyed the Hungarian army. If outsmarting the opponents failed, the Mongols took an equal fight. The front rows were archers, tasked with inflicting maximum damage, especially by targeting horses. Sometimes enemies started fleeing. If not, Genghis Khan began to shake the redoubts. Flanks advanced, with the main task on the right wing. Ideally, it was supposed to kill the commander. Arrows flew from the opposite side, and close combat ensued. The strongest units were kept in reserve until the last. Military leaders almost never entered battle. Genghis Khan's army excelled in open battles, but had to learn siege warfare. They were aided by engineers from conquered regions. Especially the Chinese. Genghis Khan took away not only warriors, but also the ideas of warfare and technology. These savages learned to make the weapons that were used against them. Genghis Khan and company did not rush into battle with primitive weapons. The head was protected by an iron helmet. The shell made of animal skin was with metal inserts. The main weapon was a bow finished with Chinese lacquer. At hand were small spears and knives. This was how main troops went into battle. In addition, the Mongols also had heavy cavalry. They wielded long spears, their armor covered almost the entire body, and large shields protected also less armored comrades from arrows. During the siege of the Great Wall, Genghis Khan used siege catapults he had learned about from the Tanguts. The Mongols defeated this people before. Conquering part of the Celestial Empire contributed to the breakthrough in army's weaponry. The Mongols used Chinese achievements. So, when the horde shifted its direction, it wasn't just an army of likely the best warriors, but an army with likely the best warriors and probably the best weapons. Hand powder shells, Chinese siege catapults, and even huge heavy crossbows. To understand the scale, it took 100 people to transport and maintain one such crossbow. Prisoners were used. In Europe, the Mongols also adopted powerful deadly trebuchets. The Mongols became stronger, conquered more territories, and became the main force. True gods of war. But why don't we all speak Mongolian? Why did this empire collapse if it was so powerful? Everything was simple. After the death of Genghis Khan, he was poisoned in 1227, the horde no longer had such a strong leader and could not continue its conquests. The grandson of Genghis Khan, Batu, could probably go as far into Europe as he would like. It was Danilo Halitsky who paid tribute to him, it was he who burned Kiev, Krakow, and half of Hungary and reached all the way to the Balkans. But instead of developing success, he returned home so that his relatives would not forget about him when they divided the lands after the death of Khan Ojadai, Genghis Khan's successor. Even in such conditions, the Mongol Empire existed for several more decades. The last Khan whose authority was recognized across the entire empire was Mongol. He died in 1259. Then a fierce struggle for power began, which finally broke the empire into smaller parts. Plague epidemics probably played a role. However, the Mongols did not lose their own empire on the battlefield. Despite its collapse, they remain the most significant conquerors in the history of mankind.